I'm going to show you a timeline, and you have to tell me whether or not this is all a coincidence. December 19th, a judge orders the release of over 2 million Epstein documents. January 3rd, the second deadline passes, but that same day, we invade Venezuela. January 6th, the president threatens military action to take Greenland. January 13th, Bill and Hillary Clinton refuse to testify under oath in regard to Epstein. Congress threatens to hold them in contempt. But what about the other people in the files, like the sitting president? He doesn't have to show up. And meanwhile, the news cycle is somewhere else every 5 minutes. So in mid-December, we have the Epstein Files that are supposed to be released. Less than 1% has been released in every single time that there's been a deadline. There's been multiple. Now, there is a bigger story to bury that story, and I think that it is the biggest cover-up in the history of the United States of America. And that's what today's video is about. Luckily, we have the National Archives and news headlines and newspapers from the last 100 years to see that this is all a part of a playbook that's happened again and again and again. We have Granada, Panama, Sudan, Iraq, the other ones. I'm sure there's plenty more. In the last 40 years, every scandal has had a war, it seems like. Then every war buries that scandal. It's been happening for our entire lives, and I don't think it's going to be stopping anytime soon. All right, so let's start here with this guy, Jeffrey Epstein. You've probably heard about Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein Files. He's been very popular for quite a while. He's a billionaire connected to everyone, a convicted sex offender who got one of the most insane plea deals in history back in 2008. He spent 13 months in a county jail, but he got to leave 6 days a week on work release to go to his office. So 12 hours a day out of jail. And the prosecutor who gave him that deal was Alex Acosta, who later became Trump's Secretary of Labor. He eventually resigned for related pressure. Now, as time has gone on, that 2008 sweetheart deal with Epstein has become its own scandal. The victims at the time weren't even notified, which is a legal requirement, and a federal judge later ruled their rights were violated. But by then, Epstein had walked free for over a decade and was then arrested in 2019 on federal charges, and a month later, he was found dead with cameras conveniently malfunctioned, guards asleep, and somehow nobody saw anything, guys. Not even the meatball. Not even the meatball saw anything. That's right. This is a meatball pomodoro, okay? And I got it from that little Italian restaurant that you can see in those malls. You ever been there? Buca di Beppo? I think that's what it's called. Buca di Beppo? It's the most convenient suicide in history. We still don't have any answers, guys. And then all these people who built their podcast platforms like Dan Bongino on the fact that Epstein did not kill himself, and then they got into the government and they're just like, oh, I'm a shill. I'm a MAGA guy. And then he's like doing this shit. He thinks he looks cool. How about this Dan Bongino? You bitch. How about this Dan Bongino? I'm not even on TRT, motherfucker. I'm not even on TRT. Crazy! Maybe I can get a job with the FBI pretty soon. I'm not sure, though, if I'd ever really want it, to be honest. I'd rather just live a nice, short life and die of a heart attack when I'm like, I don't know, 35 or something like that with my wife. Have a few kids, maybe. There are 2 million documents sitting in the Department of Justice right now. FBI files, flight logs, photos, communications, everything in regard to Epstein. And as of today, less than 1% has been released. And that is a travesty. It's an American nightmare. It is the biggest cover-up. We are witnessing it right now in real time in history, and it doesn't seem like anything is going to happen, which is what's really frustrating to me. You know, I bought a little Cato Institute pocket constitution when I was 18 years old. I wanted to become a politically involved person. I wanted to run for local government and work my way up. I genuinely did, because I love America, and I love people, and I love the people of America. And now, as I, am a entertainment YouTube grifter, I realize that it's just all nonsense, and there's nothing at all that any of us can do, even slightly. Or at least that's how it seems, all right? And if we do, we'll get hit by vomit tech. So why is it a big deal that only 1% has been released? Well, guys, we have a government, and that government holds itself responsible. The different parts of it are supposed to. Congress passed a law demanding that these files, 400 and 27-1 votes demanding the files to come out. That is basically unanimous. Republicans and Democrips, I think that's what Jesse Ventura calls Republicans and Democrats. They actually agreed on something for once, and Don Ladd Turnip signed it into law. Then, the big day, December 19th came, the legal deadline, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. They just didn't do it. They just said, no, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. They violated their own law, their own federal laws, with the claim that they needed more time to review 5.2 million files. So that's where we are still now, with the same amount of files out and also a pending invasion of Greenland. We stole the leader of Venezuela in the middle of the night and made all his security guards throw up using our epic prism tech, blasting them with Invisirays. Congress passed a bipartisan law, the president signed it, and the Department of Justice ignored it, all right? So I guess, I don't know, who's in these files to prevent them from coming out? I mean, I think we all know, basically at this point. Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, second son of the Queen, may God rest her soul, emails show he literally asked Ghislaine Maxwell for, quote, new inappropriate friends, which is epic, that guy, and Ghislaine Maxwell. She's serving 20 years in a federal prison for sex trafficking, and serving 20 years in prison is a very loose usage of that phrase because she's barely in prison, just like Jeffrey in 2008. By the way, Ghislaine was Epstein's partner. She recruited the victims, and she hasn't publicly named anyone else. Her silence protects the names in the files, which is why she's serving such a light sentence right now in Texas. She's in Texas right now, which is pretty cool. She's my neighbor. I wonder if she loves the Constitution in America and the idea of the Federalists as much as I do. Probably not. Feudalism is still an option, by the way, if we want to go that route. We could do feudalism. At least with feudalism, it'd be a little more honest. Prince Andrew settled a lawsuit with one of Epstein's victims for an undisclosed amount and was stripped of his royal titles, but he's still walking free in Windsor Castle right now. Bill Clinton took at least 27 flights on Epstein's private jet, the one that they called the Lolita Express, which is just like a fun little allegory for pedophile airlines, essentially. And the Department of Justice just released a photo of him because now it's a political weapon, sitting in a hot tub where the person next to him is completely redacted, assuming it's some kind of victim. Bill Clinton refuses to say who it was, and as of yesterday, the 13th of January, has refused to testify under oath with his wife, Hillary, putting them in contempt of Congress. By the time this comes out, he'll probably be in jail. I'm not exactly sure. Then there's Donald Trump. A federal prosecutor's email was just released saying that Trump flew on Epstein's jet and, quote, many more times than reported. We can confirm at least 8 flights. Several of them were alone with Epstein with no other passengers on board. They were best bros, it seems. The list goes on with the people who Epstein was involved with: Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Kevin Spacey, Steve Bannon, Peter Thiel, Les Wexner, the name that matters a ton more than most people realize. He's a billionaire who founded Victoria's Secret and The Limited, and one of the richest men in Ohio, which is big. And for some reason, he gave Jeffrey Epstein everything: a Manhattan mansion worth between $60 and $70 million, a private jet, and even power of attorney over his entire financial empire. Nobody has ever explained why a legitimate billionaire would hand that kind of control to a college dropout loser with no real credentials. It doesn't make any sense. The question has never been answered, and Lex Wexner, obviously, Les Wexner? Yeah, that's his name, isn't talking. And once again, just so you remember, this is not a left versus right thing. It's not a red versus blue thing. Both sides are implicated. It is quite literally a them and then everybody else type situation. Them. It's like 50 really powerful people and then everybody else in the whole world. It's amazing that some people are like such bootlickers. I can't wrap my head around it, dude. Like, they have no effect over your day-to-day life. You should be looking at the trees and digging little holes in the dirt. You want to feel comfortable and validated? Dig a little hole in the dirt, all right? Don't bootlick some random-ass politician or some freak who doesn't give a about you in any way. Dig a small hole for 5 minutes. You'll feel way better about yourself. So yeah, it's bad. It's not RVB. It's not simple. It's not black or white. If it was all the Republicans being bad, then Joe Biden would have released the files. If it was all the Democrats being bad, then Donald Trump would have released the files. No, it's everybody. Every rich and powerful person is somehow implicated. It's 50 of them, and then there's all of us over here. And there's not that much of a difference between all of us, and there's a really big difference between us and them. It's really, when you start to think about it, it's like a really big difference. I think this is how the system of feudalism failed. People started really thinking about the difference between the vassals and even the knights and the serfs and the peasants and then the royalty. And then they just went, because there's a lot more of them or whatever. I don't know how it works. Trump initially worked with Mike Johnson to stop these files from coming out, but only reversed after much public pressure. And the Clintons, heavily implicated, they wrote a letter saying the investigation is, quote, literally designed to result in their imprisonment. And now they're refusing to show up, and Congress is moving to hold them in contempt. So they've done their best to not release the files, and then now they're forced to release them, and they're still not releasing them. But they're somehow getting away with not releasing them because now we're invading Greenland. And that's what this is. It's about a cover-up. So obviously, none of these people, except Obama, what's he been up to? And Bush. Hey, buddy, I've been in Texas, Crawford, Texas. I'm actually from Maine, but I have a Texas accent. My little buddy, Greg Abbott, tree fell on him and took his legs right out from underneath him. If that ain't bad luck, I don't know what is. All right? He has trouble getting a stiffy because his legs don't work. So they obviously didn't want to release it, and then they were forced to release it, but now they're getting away with not actually releasing it. That's what's happening. I mean, look at what is dominating the news right now, guys. Venezuela. They've got stories about secret sonic weapons that made soldiers bleed from their noses and vomit blood, guards collapsing, unable to move. The White House press secretary shared a completely nonsense propaganda witness account about some mystery device that, quote, made their heads explode from the inside. That is the headline on most networks. These mystery weapons that Havana syndrome, it's been a thing for a long time. Energy can destroy. We know that, all right? Nothing's new about any of this stuff. It's all fucking smoke and mirrors. You know what else can destroy someone's head? A bullet! You know what's more dangerous? A bullet! Who cares? So while all this was happening, did you see the story about the Epstein File deadline, the second Epstein File deadline that same week? No, of course you didn't. Neither did anybody else. Only person that was tweeting about it in Congress is Thomas Massie. And guess what? He's not going to get reelected. I recorded most of this video last week, and there has been quite a few updates. Bad things are coming, it seems like, and even worse things are happening on the European front, the European theater of the biggest cover-up in American history. It appears over the last few months we have gone from being a practicing constitutional republic, maybe a joke of one, to now a purely theatrical performing constitutional republic. There has still been less than 1% of all the Epstein files that are supposed to have been released. The deadlines continue to come. The government still just says no. The authors of the law, Thomas Massie and Kana, went to court asking for a special master to force the DOJ to comply to their law. And in their filing, they said that they believe criminal violations have taken place, so the DOJ filed a motion to then block it. Pam Bondi's response and argument, the DOJ's argument, is that the courts can't enforce the law. So the law does not apply to them now, apparently, according to them. I'm not sure where it says in the Constitution where you can just kind of say that type of stuff and a law can be passed 427 to 1 and then you just not have to listen to it. I'm not really sure where it says that. I don't think it says that anywhere, but it is very clear that this administration is working harder to hide this entire thing and cover this entire thing up than any past administration in the history of America. That includes the cover-up of Iran-Contra and Watergate and all the other things we've talked about in this video. It is genuinely an embarrassment. And now there's talk of Europe selling off U.S. assets to tank the dollar because that's how we fight wars in 2026, and we're not stopping with Greenland. We're going to get Greenland and all this stuff. And I'm really confused and scared. No, I'm not really scared at all, but I'm very embarrassed to BH. Another example of a sort of cover-up that's been massively signal boosted since all this stuff has come is the Minnesota situation. More information in regard to it has come out. Nick Shirley did the Channel 5 interview in which he didn't know what the word benevolent meant.
Who do you think are the 3 most benevolent billionaires?
What do you mean by the word benevolent?
And he made a total fool of himself, or so we thought. But the Channel 5 interview was actually edited in a way to make him look like even more of an idiot than he might actually be.
I don't know about that. I mean,
Name a Democrat city that's prospering right now.
well, it would have to be one that's affordable.
Name one.
Denver.
Why are you smirking? It's not prospering.
All right, so that's the clip Andrew posted, but this is the actual interaction of how it went.
Denver.
Why are you smirking?
Because I don't know if it's prospering.
It's not. See, you can't even ask the question. It's not prospering. Denver's not prospering either.
I agree that Democrat-run states are doing badly.
Kind of weird that Andrew didn't put that in, right? Maybe his base or something would not be happy with that response because he obviously got caught lying.
Andrew Callahan did objectively cut things to make that argument look weaker, but it doesn't matter. The fraud in Minnesota is real. There is a history of that. People have been arrested under a previous administration, so it isn't some kind of political harangue all the way down. But with the Minnesota thing, recently you have the right framing it like this huge thing to try and signal boost to cover up Epstein stuff and get people to forget, and then you have the left just questioning fraud claims, which are objectively true. There is quite a bit of fraud all the time, no matter what. It's very easy to take advantage of the government. Maybe they should make it harder to take advantage of the government. Probably, I would say. The fraud is definitely real, and the timing of the virality of the entire Minnesota thing is very suspicious. In my mind, it's part of the cover-up, but at the same time, it doesn't matter because there is both things can be true, right? I think, at least. Tara, go ahead and put up tweets from powerful people in the government currently that tweeted about releasing the Epstein Files and have only backtracked now that the Epstein Files are actually trying to legally be released by people who aren't the people who are powerful, I guess. I don't really know. Thank you, Tara. And also, if we're going to get mad about fraud, we have to always get mad about fraud no matter what. Show this administration's pardon letters, Tara, for people who have been convicted of fraud, who've just been pardoned because not all fraud is created equal, I guess. When I do it, it's a problem for some reason. When I don't pay my taxes for 7 years, I get in trouble for some reason. But when Andreas Enrique Camberos is sentenced to 3 years probation for conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud, he gets a pardon by the Trump administration. The major update that's happened over the last week is that the DOJ is arguing that federal courts lack the authority to enforce the Epstein Transparency Act that was written into law by Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna. It is official to this woman here, the DOJ and this administration, that no court can force them to produce the files in regard to a multi-generational child and woman ring that implicates the most powerful people in the United States of America, and now we're going to take Greenland because of it seems like. So it's pretty wild. The breadth of the ability of the American government to cover shit up is incredible. Let's go back to 1983, the Beirut barracks bombing in Lebanon that killed 241 Americans. 2 days later, we invaded Granada. The investigation into that bombing disappeared. And that's worth its own whole video, bro. The 80s.
My favorite president is Ronald Reagan.
Yeah? Really? 1998. Bill Clinton facing impeachment. The same day, we bomb Sudan. NBC is literally playing clips from Wag the Dog while covering the attack. By the way, this is Wag the Dog.
Oh, jeez.
The sexual misconduct occurred inside the Oval Office.
But we'll walk you through the full history on these things a little bit later. But the pattern is there.
We can distract the press for 11 days till the election. I think we got a chance.
These are just two examples of incidents reported at the time by major networks where there's a scandal, then there's a crisis. There's a scandal, then there's a crisis. Where there's a crisis, then the scandal disappears. So, after the Minnesota drama, January 3rd, 2026, the DOJ has another legal deadline to release the next batch of Epstein Files. And that exact same day, we invade Venezuela and capture a sitting head of state. For the first time in American history, we just zoink a guy out of his presidential chair, and there's wall-to-wall coverage on every news network for days, because that is actually insane that happened. That's legit. Did you hear anything about Epstein that week? No, probably not. It got completely buried. Then comes Greenland. The president starts threatening military force against Denmark, which is an ally of ours. I don't understand, over a dookie-ass sheet of ice in the Arctic. It's not actually. It's a very valuable piece of land. We'll get into that. And that dominates the news cycle for an entire week while the Department of Justice quietly continues to stall on the files. See where I'm kind of taking this little red thread here? So, tools to cover up scandals, crises. That's what these are. Venezuela. Let's start with Venezuela, because that is where our current chapter is, and we're going to be involved in Venezuela for probably a while. It seems like the next sort of big flashpoint. We're going to be going to war with Colombia, it seems like. Unfortunately, guys, how the did we get here? Because this did not come out of nowhere. We're not just randomly stealing some guy. The United States have been trying to get rid of Maduro for almost an entire decade. Hugo Chavez ran Venezuela from 1998 until he died in 2013. He nationalized the oil industry in Venezuela and built close ties with Cuba, a communist nation, Russia, kind of a communist nation, and Iran, an enemy of the United States of America. Basically, they're that little nugget really close to us that's allied with everything that America does not want in the Western Hemisphere. In 2002, we backed a coup against Hugo Chavez, and it worked for about 48 hours. Chavez was detained, a new president was installed, and then Chavez supporters flooded the streets and put him right back into power. When Chavez died, his hand-picked successor took over. That was Nicolas Maduro. He narrowly won the 2013 election, and then the economy collapsed. Hyperinflation occurred. I'm sure you've probably heard that as a political talking point over the last, couple election cycles. Venezuela, oh, socialism, oh my God, Venezuela, oh my God, oil, oh crap, Hugo Chavez. Oh my God, crappy, poopy. Venezuela was stricken with hyperinflation, food shortages, mass immigration with an E, millions of Venezuelans fleeing the country. By 2017, Trump started sanctions on Venezuela, and by 2018, Maduro held another election that basically nobody recognized as legitimate. Then came 2019. In January of 2019, a guy named Juan Guaido, the head of Venezuela's National Assembly, declared himself the legitimate president. He said that Maduro's election was fraudulent, so he was taking over. And here's the thing. The United States recognizes Guaido. So did Canada, so did most of Europe, and over 50 other countries. So for years, we officially considered Guaido the president of Venezuela and Maduro an illegitimate dictator. That's like most of the world, well, the Western world, all agreeing on that. This message is sponsored by ZocDoc. I've been working heavily on the back end of various businesses I'm deeply involved in. Sometimes the back end gets a rash. Raise your hand if you've had a rash on your back end. And that is why we use ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can find and book high-quality in-network doctors. You can search by specialty, or you can filter by insurance, location, availability, and you can even see real, verified patient reviews before you book. Once you find someone you like on ZocDoc, you can use their real-time availabilities and book instantly. No phone tag, no back and or forth, and a lot of appointments happen fast as well, usually within 24 to 72 hours, and sometimes even same day. You can do in-person visits or video visits, whatever gets your back end ripping. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/Oompaville to find an in-network doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/Oompaville. Go today. Click the link in the description or even scan the QR code that I forced Tara to put in every single video. They attempted some coups. All right, they failed raids. Negotiations went nowhere. Guaido's support eventually collapsed, and by 2023, even Joseph Biden stopped recognizing him. Aw, poor Guaido. But what about the drug charges? Because you probably heard about that too, narco-terrorism. In March of 2020, the Department of Justice unsealed an indictment charging Maduro with narco-terrorism, and they put a $15 million bounty on his head and $10 million on each of his associates. The indictment says that for 25 years, the Venezuelan leadership worked with the FARC, the Sinaloan cartel, and even Tren de Aragua, all trafficking cocaine through Venezuela and into the United States of America. And whether you believe those charges or not, they've been sitting there since 2020, and then in July 2024, Maduro held another election. The opposition candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, won 67% of the vote, according to independent tallies. That is incredible freedom for Venezuela. It seems like a lot of Venezuelans don't like being under the thumb of a drug cartel, evil dictator guy, right? 67% of the vote has to be enough to be able to get a new leader in there. Maduro claimed victory. Yay! Unfortunately, though, before he could finish celebrating, we invaded. January 3rd, 2026, around 2 in the morning local time, American bombs started falling in Venezuela. The operation was called Absolute Resolve, and within hours, we had done something that had never happened in the history of America. We captured a sitting foreign head of state. That's fucking crazy. Nicolas Maduro and his wife were taken from Fort Tiuna, the main military base in Venezuela, and put on a plane to the United States. What was his first statement to the press? He said, quote, "I am a prisoner of war." And are we at war? He's not completely wrong. We broke a lot of laws. We did. I didn't do anything, but we did. You see, you can't just sneak in under the cover of darkness and just grab a fella and his wife and just make him your prisoner. The UN Charter explicitly prohibits military action against sovereign nations without Security Council authorization. We didn't have it. In fact, the Security Council actually condemned the invasion, which is the opposite of getting authorization. How about congressional authorization? You can't just be like, we're going to invade these people. I'm the president. There's multiple branches of power. It's like the whole idea with America and the Constitution and the First and especially the Second Amendment. But now that there's drones, the Second Amendment's kind of nonsense to be and mere vomit guns. Oh my God. This sucks, dude. No congressional authorization to snatch a guy in the middle of the night. Man, we don't need it anyways, guys. We have a president. That's what presidents are for. So somebody had to let Trump know, right? What do you think he said? He said, "I don't need international law. Pizza."
Do you see any checks on your power on the world stage? Is there anything that could stop you if you wanted to?
Yeah, there's one thing. My own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop. And that's law. Very good. I don't need international law. I'm not looking to hurt people.
125 nations out of 195 in the world in the non-aligned movement formally condemned the invasion of Venezuela. Colombia mobilized troops to their border, and their president, who is in this insanely, unbelievably AI, this image of this guy is so weird looking. How does he look like that? This guy threatened to take up arms against... Bro, did you not see the magic weaponry we have? We have wizards and warlocks apparently in Delta Force. They're not just guys with guns. They're 6'5" corn-fed country boys with, magic missiles. Literally. And they always roll D20s, it seems. I don't understand. So yeah, January 3rd, another legal deadline for the Epstein Files for the Department of Justice. The second major deadline for releasing those documents. That was the same day we invaded Venezuela, guys. Bada bing, bada boom, completely buried by the invasion. When Trump was asked, why didn't you have more files released from the Department of Justice? He said, "I'm busy invading Venezuela. I love the people of Venezuela. And they love me." They actually really do. A lot of people are very happy in Venezuela, which I can't speak to Venezuelan politics. I don't actually know what's real. A lot of smoke and mirrors. I'm not going to pretend like what I'm reading is legit, but a lot of Venezuelan people seem to be very, very, very happy that Nicolas Maduro is no longer the leader. And obviously that came about through a violation of international law. But I don't know. What do I know, dude? I'm not sure. Then, January 4th. Another day on the timeline, the biggest cover-up in American history. One day after Venezuela, while everyone is still talking about Maduro, Katie Miller, wife of this demon, Stephen Miller, posts a picture of the American flag planted on a glacier. The caption in one word, soon, brother. Oh my God, can you believe this? Stephen Miller himself, by the way, this guy is crazy. Stephen Miller himself goes on CNN and says, military is always an option. That is in regard to, if you haven't put the pieces together, military action against Greenland, a territory of Denmark, which Denmark, by the way, a founding member of NATO, historical ally of the United States of America. We have the same culture. What the Trump told The Atlantic, we do need Greenland. Absolutely. Suddenly, the news cycle, still no Epstein, no more Maduro. Now we're talking about invading Greenland, guys. An ally. Not even a dictator for 30 years. A ally. And I have to, of course, give you context on this because this didn't come out of nowhere either. United States has been trying to buy Greenland for over 150 years. It is an incredible place, country, whatever there's like 30,000 people there. There's nobody there, really. That's like as many people as in the town that I live in. Ain't a there, okay? But there's still a sovereign nation, and like, come on, man. In 1867, right after we bought Alaska from Russia, Secretary of State William Seward wanted Greenland too. That didn't happen. 1946, right after World War II, President Truman offered Denmark $100 million in gold for Greenland. They said no, but we did get something out of it. In 1951, we made a deal with Denmark to build Thule Air Base at the northern tip of Greenland, and that base is now called Pituffik Space Base, and it is the northernmost American military installation in the entire world. It's 1,500 kilometers from the North Pole. Not that far. Now, this base was incredibly important at the time because of its geographical location. It would have been the first line of defense against a Soviet missile attack and was the only facility that could monitor all of Russia's missile activity and send a warning to the Pentagon within 60 seconds of a launch. So it's incredibly important during the USSR, and still, I guess Russia is kind of our enemy now. I don't really know what's going on in the world. The point is, we've always wanted Greenland for strategic reasons. We have rare earth minerals, oil, gas, most importantly, the Guyuk Gap, which is the maritime passage between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom that connects the Arctic to the Atlantic. Very important. Little gaps where boats go, extremely important. 2019, Trump first floated the idea of buying Greenland. Denmark said, no! The prime minister said, that is absurd. Or at least that's what I think he said. I don't speak Danish, and I would never want to speak Danish. For a while, though, the prime minister saying that's absurd, it's just that was the end of it, all right? And then Trump wins in 2024 and back on the Greenland bandwagon, baby. Come on, man! Sends Don Jr. to visit. Then he threatens tariffs on Denmark, and he says that military force is always an option. Now, as awesome as it would be to just have Greenland, because it would be pretty damn cool, that's a big old place. The Greenland effect looks huge on maps. You know, it looks really big. It's kind of tiny, but it still looks big on maps. It has 57,000 people, and only 6% of the 57,000 want to become a part of the United States of America. 85% are completely against the idea. I don't even know why they would be, though. Now, it is very absurd to just be like, we're going to take Greenland, and we're going to bomb them, and we're going to do military intervention, and we're going to treat them like our bitch. You know, that's what we're going to do. It's so surprising that even Republicans are pushing back on this idea. Senator Tom Tillis, a Republican from North Carolina, said he's sick of stupid. Representative Don Bacon, also a Republican, nobody in the world has the last name Bacon and is a Democrat, he said publicly that this was, quote, really dumb. When members of your own party are calling your foreign policy dumb, either something is very wrong, there's a big misunderstanding, or something is epic and it's going exactly as planned. Now, I'm not sure if this is part of the Epstein cover-up. TBH, I think this just might be our new foreign policy, which is just being really dumb. I feel like it's weird and it's embarrassing. To me, it's very embarrassing, man. I feel like a fool being an American. I love America, and I love being an American, and I will always be patriotic. I hope. I will always be patriotic. I hope that nothing extreme happens. All right, guys? I hope nothing extreme happens because I really do love America. I love all the people here, and everybody I know around me is really awesome and cool and nice, and the people in the local town I live in are pretty awesome. You know? That's what it's really about at the end of the day when you think about it. But by God, this shit's getting dangerous now. The Danish Prime Minister released a statement in regard to all this weird posturing and said, quote, if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops. Everything stops. The Atlantic Council, which is basically the think tank for Western foreign policy, called this NATO's darkest hour, which is bad. And we're talking about 80 years of Western alliance potentially collapsing, the entire post-World War II order. It's all at risk because the President of the United States of America is threatening to invade Greenland, an ally. Maybe that's not the point, though. Maybe it's just a cover-up for Epstein, because that one doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like, when they dump the NATO would dump bonds and treasury. Europe has a lot of our debt. I don't really get it. If they dump the bonds, that they would be because they rely on us. I don't know, dude. It's really confusing to think about. Either way, Venezuela, Greenland, Minnesota, The DOJ,
Well, you should go Epstein Files.
this is the greatest scandal ever, dude. Watergate and impeachments. The shit has been so much less bad that has had so much of a bigger thing. You know, I'm very well spoken. All right, guys? It's mind-blowing to me that this is just not a big deal. But it is a big deal. It's bigger than Watergate. It's bigger than any scandal in the history of the American government. There isn't one that comes close. This is way bigger than Monica Lewinsky nonsense. It's crazy. By the way, Venezuela, Greenland, not the only ones. Mexico, Trump said, quote, something's going to have to be done about Mexico, and he refused to rule out military action. 52nd state, maybe. Colombia, he called their president a sick man and threatened economic retaliation. Then, new sanctions and military posturing with Cuba and immediate threats with Iran. There is a massive kind of seeming revolution of sorts going on in Iran. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't really kept up with it, but I know that I see a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of dead people. There's a lot of people who are being murdered by the government of Iran, I think. I don't know what's real at this point. Then, with Panama, we demanded control of the canal, threatened consequences, and Canada threatened them with annexation, and Trump called Trudeau governor. Troops are being repositioned in Syria. Strikes have been authorized. 11 separate international incidents, all from one administration that is under the scrutiny of the American people because of Epstein, because of a pedophile. That's what it seems like. It seems like a response to all this, to be honest. The Chatham House, one of the most respected foreign policy institutes in Europe, allegedly, said that Europe must now consider the United States as a potential adversary. This is an isolationist movement we're a part of here, guys, like Monroe, the Monroe Doctrine. Some analysts are calling Donald Trump's foreign policy a play on the Monroe Doctrine from 1823, which was America's policy of telling Europe to stay the out of the Western Hemisphere, you The main difference was the Monroe Doctrine was about defense, keeping European colonial powers away from the Americas. The Monroe Doctrine is about offense. It's the idea that we can just take whatever we want and invade whoever we want, and that international law simply does not apply to us. And I like the idea of that for me, but not for the government. That I don't, that's going to only be around for a little bit of time, and they're going to have massive consequences for me, and I might have to go fight a war. I'm not going to do that. I will not do that. I promise. It's kind of a rewriting of the rules, it seems. God is supposed to do that type of stuff. Epstein Files, unraveling of the entire Western world that started after the last World War, which is probably means we're about to be into another world wars, but it might not have anything to do with the Epstein Files, unfortunately. But it's the biggest cover-up in America. It seems like a fucking big I farted while I was saying that. I still think it's a cover-up. I mentioned Granada earlier in the very beginning of this video. We've got to paint the full picture for you because it is a pattern and it is a playbook, and that's what governments do. They lie to you. On October 23rd, 1983, a truck bomb hit the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut, Lebanon. 241 Americans died in a single blast. It was the deadliest day for the United States military since the Tet Offensive in Vietnam a while before. The Reagan administration was in full crisis mode. The president had sent those troops there, and the security had clearly failed, and the American people wanted answers. 200 Marines just got vaporized. And just 2 days after the worst military disaster in 2 decades, we invaded Granada, a tiny Caribbean island with 100,000 people that offered no strategic value and was a minimal threat. But good TV, guys. A win! But here's where it gets really epic. Reagan banned the media from covering the invasion for the first 48 hours. Reporters couldn't get there. They couldn't verify anything. They just had to report what the military told them. It's perfect. We know that in wartime, the military mouthpiece is objective truth, and that's it. There's no such thing as propaganda that comes from the military. It's not a thing. PBS later did an analysis and concluded, quote, Granada's success replaced the bitter memory of the massacre. It's pretty well acknowledged now in modern times that the invasion of Granada was just to make people forget about Beirut. Reagan never retaliated for Beirut, never held anyone accountable. The investigation quietly disappeared. People just forgot about it, and he somehow won re-election in one of the biggest landslides in American history. Then, 6 years later, it happened again. 1989. Manuel Noriega, the dictator of Panama, aka Pineapple Head, had been on the CIA payroll for years. He was our big ragtime boy. He helped us fight communists in Central America, and we looked the other way while he ran drugs and killed his political opponents. But then he became an embarrassment. George H.W. Bush greatest president of all time, had worked directly with Noriega when he was the director of the CIA, and those connections were becoming a bit of a political liability. So we launched Operation Just Cause. We invaded Panama, captured Noriega, sitting pineapple head of state, and we flew him to the United States for a trial. Pretty familiar idea right there. It's kind of similar to Venezuela, but like on a smaller scale. That one could have been crazy for that government, but nothing would get by George H.W. Bush. Vice President of the United States of America, CIA director. That guy is like, oh man, it's just the when you start to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, he's just like the cream of the crop of evil, basically. It's like World War II, American News Systems, OSS, CIA, intelligence, propaganda, Project Mockingbird, MK Ultra. It's insane. It's never stopped though since then. And now we're just living at 2.0. The next one is so on the nose that it isn't even funny. 1998, Bill Clinton is facing the impeachment over the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Grand jury testimony is scheduled. The walls are closing in, and his presidency is hanging on by a thread. August 20th, 1998, the same day as the testimony, United States bombs Sudan and Afghanistan. Boom! Cruise missiles into a pharmaceutical plant that we claimed was making chemical weapons. Turns out, wasn't. It was making medicine, pharmaceuticals. And somehow it gets crazier. There was a movie that had come out just 8 months earlier called Wag the Dog.
There's a crisis in the White House.
What's the crisis?
And the president's top advisors have been called together.
Oh, jeez.
The sexual misconduct occurred inside the Oval Office,
which was about a president who starts a fake war to distract from a sex scandal.
Has an idea.
we can't afford a war.
We're going to have the appearance of a war.
And I'm sure they probably knew kind of, it's in the zeitgeist. Oh, Bill Clinton's a old horny bastard. He plays a... he's a horny mother... or whatever, and he's evil, and he killed that guy Vince. NBC played clips from that movie 6 times in 48 hours while covering the bombing, and reporters were openly asking if it was a distraction within 30 minutes of the announcement. Is this a distraction from the important testimony that's going to determine the future of our democracy or whatever it is, a republic? So obvious. Even the puppets in the media were like, is this a distraction? Yeah, of course it is. Let's sit down and have a beer together. All right, that's what life's about. It's not about all this shit. Clinton served out the rest of his term. It worked. That's all Trump's trying to do. He's just trying to create, the walls are closing in on him. The walls are closing in. I'm a 500-time felon. I have 500 felonies or whatever. Then there's the biggest one of our era, which we all remember and probably even know some people who either died or are affected by it still. That is the invasion of Iraq and the war in Afghanistan, which lasted way too long. This one isn't as direct and obvious. It's more of a, how do we, continue the funneling of laundered money from, worldwide global heroin production in Afghanistan into the global banks? And how do we continue the mob, the worldwide mob, and how do we continue being at the tippy top of the worldwide mob? That's more of what this one's about, kind of, like a really general sense. 2003, weapons of mass destruction, Saddam Hussein, post 9/11, you remember the story. Saddam Hussein, that little red guy who was really good at hiding, you know about him. We now know with absolute certainty that the case for invading Iraq was built on a foundation of falsehoods. That is from the Pew Research Center. That is not from a conspiracy website. That is absolutely legit. But if you, at the time, were to look up anything on the internet, you're a conspiracy theorist. If you look up anything in regard to 9/11, total conspiracy theorist. There were aluminum tubes that were found that supposedly proved nuclear weapons. They're just rocket tubes. The experts knew that. The mobile weapon labs, weather balloon stations, the experts knew that. The yellow cake uranium from Niger, that finding was based on forged documents that the CIA had already flagged as unreliable. Okay? This one's a big cover-up, I've got to say. The war in Iraq is a total 100% racket from start to finish. Nothing was gained. Only loss. That's it. And we do that a lot. There's been a lot of big cover-ups. I feel like the Epstein one, maybe that one is bigger. But yeah, every single justification for the war in Iraq was completely wrong. And significant parts of the intelligence community knew that it was wrong while they were saying it wasn't wrong on television. But 80% of Americans approved how Bush was handling Iraq. 80% at the time. By the time the truth came out, by the time we learned that there were no WMDs and that we had just completely been lied into a war that killed hundreds of thousands of people on both sides and enriched like 7 people, it didn't matter, guys. The war already happened, the news cycle moved on, and the people responsible faced 0 consequences. Create a big crisis, dominate the news. By the time people realize,
I'm a puppet. I'm a real boy. I'm a real boy.
no, you're not. You're fake. You're not real. You don't actually have freedom. You don't actually own your land as long as you have to pay taxes. November 18th, 2025, the Epstein Transparency Act passes 427 to 1. Unanimous. Media barely mentions it. November 19th, Trump signs it into law. Again, brief mention, move on. December 19th, this is the first deadline, the legal deadline for the releasing of the files. They just didn't do it. The media covers holiday news, Christmas shopping. Some people are making noise about it, whatever, but not really. December 21st, Greenland envoy gets appointed. Suddenly there's chatter about ice sheets. Remember that date. December 23rd, Trump's flight logs get released showing he flew on Epstein's jet more than reported. Next day, Christmas Eve, nobody gives a December 30th, the DOJ quietly admits they're sitting on 5.2 million files. What's the media covering? New Year's Eve, ball drop. I have my own balls. They don't drop. That's not normal. Champagne recommendations. January 3rd, invade Venezuela. Oh yeah, also, second DOJ deadline completely buried. Epstein, biggest scandal ever. How many laws have ever been signed in history where it's one guy who disagreed? Like none, ever. And they don't care. They're not releasing it. January 4th, Katie Miller posts flag. Caption says soon, ice sheets, brother. January 5th, the DOJ admits they've released less than 1% of the files. Who cares? Nobody cares. Venezuela, Greenland, Minnesota, guys. Now, I'm not telling you this is a definite conspiracy. I can't prove what's in someone's head. I can't prove intent, obviously. But we can show documented facts, timelines, and historical precedents. I think that's the most important thing. A historical precedent that goes back 40 years. I believe it. I think this is a massive cover-up, and I think we should do whatever we can to not shut the f*** up about it. But you got to let me know what you think down below. Because, like, you know, I don't know. This apparently is not that big of a deal. So, anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, press the like button, and I'll see you in the next one.